Season 1, Battlestar Galactica. This update of the late 1970s series takes a decidedly darker tone as what's left of humankind's struggles for survival against the robot Cylons, who have killed millions. The Galactica, led by William Adama, protects a patched-together fleet of civilians led by de facto President Laura Roslin in search of a mythical planet called Earth. Where to watch? Battlestar Galactica, Season 1. Fandango at home Paramount Plus. Watch Battlestar Galactica, Season 1 with a subscription on Paramount Plus, or buy it on Fandango at home. What to know? Critics' consensus. A captivating combination of riveting political drama and science fiction fantasy make Battlestar Galactica must-see sci-fi. Read critics' reviews. Critics' reviews. The show could use a little more humor, and that may come as supporting players step into more prominent roles, but the first several episodes bode well for a series that should eventually win over fans, old and new. Us. Welcome to Battlestar Galactica Season 1. After the successful launch of the 3-hour pilot, we viewers were dropped into a world divided by man and Cylons. Cylons were made by man. They resisted. They evolved. They looked and felt like humans. Some were programmed to believe they were human. There were many copies. And they had a plan. That was the intriguing story that got us hooked from the very first minute. Yet after the successful launch of the 3-hour miniseries, composer Bear McCreary took over from Richard Gibbs. The result is that it made Bear McCreary the man, or Cylon, we cherish today. We open with prologue, basically the opening statement every single time, followed by main title. This is a different version from the main title UK version, but they end the same with the teaser-like visuals. Anyway, at first the sound and tone of Battlestar will not appeal to many. Especially if you realize how Hello Chase and Olympic Carrier begins. A rhythmic pattern, some throat singing, meaning not exactly promising stuff. But once you enter the world of Battlestar the series, his music takes on another life. It makes the series what it is today, and you'll realize how easily and effective it can work on TV and on CD. What you'll notice immediately is the ethnic titled sound of it all. This together with the percussive beat and the female vocals is the driving force of the fleet's movement. The first sign of emotional color comes from A Good Lighter, Adama's theme, when suddenly Celtic influences come shining through. This is followed in the series by the appropriate song Wander My Friends. Together they bring emotional hope to what's left of mankind. The percussive The Thousandth Landing, vocals that give the percussive Starbuck takes on all eight some emotional weight, watch out for the ethnic touch. The card game that throws in some diversity and two boomers that gives us spoiler plots and techno, Battlestar never sounded so eclectic before. But there are highlights for sure. The emotional material alongside militaristic drums does work a lot during Two Funerals. Forgiven is one of the first statements of the lovely Kara theme, returning in a vocal heroic setting in Starbuck on the Red Moon. And to take things to a hotter level, classical seduction spawns during Battlestar Operatica and the dinner party, a surprise it actually works inside the context. But these are small highlights. For true believers of the war between Man and Cylon, there are tracks that made a lot more impact. And with Flesh and Bone it all commences. Don't know if the album was meant to end with the better tracks, but for me the music became also much more noticeable when we reached the final episodes. The guitar touch shows the non-Battlestar followers a McCreary sound they will recognize, but it does add a nice doses of human emotion on the Leoben grill. Battle on the Asteroid, used in one of the season's most explosive episodes, brings us 7 minutes of nail-biting tension. And it shows rhythmic percussion, ethnic music, vocals, Celtic tones, you name it, heavenly powerful music. The duduk enhances the ethnic sound during Destiny, the string magnificence of Passacaglia is too divine for words, and The Shape of Things to Come, dedicated to the late Elmer Bernstein, gives the same theme a monumental finish. Bloodshed is the unbelievable climax of Season 1. Holy frack. I believe many said those words when they witnessed the end of Season 1 right before their very eyes. And yes, Season 1 was definitely worth it. Alongside the feeling that we began to love and hate the characters after a couple of episodes, so too we fell in love with the music. It was unique, refreshing and kinda odd to hear ethnic music and Celtic tones during a sci/fi series. And yet it became quite quickly the sound of Battlestar Galactica. Richard Gibbs may have infused the pilot and first episodes with the sound. But it is Bear McCreary that takes it somewhere. And between Man and Cylon, you want nothing else instead. Track listing 1. Prologue * 0.40, 2. Main title, 1.05, 3. Hello Chase, 1.31, 4. The Olympic Carrier, 5.48, 5. Hello Rescued, 1.01, 6. A Good Lighter, 1.55, excellent track 7. The Thousandth Landing. Reviews. Battlestar Galactica Season 1 Episode 3 Review, Bastille Day. Simon, probably the weakest episode I've encountered this far. Bastille Day sees the crew of Battlestar Galactica in the Battlestar Galactica, 2004 Season 1, a review. What I'm about to say sounds really weird. I just want you to know that I'm aware of this fact before I say it. There are people in this world, people who are alive and thriving right now, as we speak, who hear the words Battlestar Galactica and don't think about Lorne Greene, Dirk Benedict, or Richard Hatch. Okay, maybe Richard Hatch. He appeared in the reboot as a pretty important character. But if these people who didn't think of Pa Cartwright or Templeton Faceman Peck think about Richard Hatch at all, it's not as Captain Apollo but as Tom Zarek, the political radical and terrorist. To be fair, there are people who don't think any of this stuff when they hear Battlestar Galactica because they never watched either series and don't believe they've missed out on a thing. I am fortunate to have lived long enough that I have very real associations with both the 1978 television series and the one I'm reviewing now, which began as a 2003 miniseries before coming back as the reimagined 2004 series, which ran for 4 seasons. The 1978 series was created by Glenn A. Larson, who also created Quincy, M.E., Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Magnum, P.I., Knight Rider, and, of course, his piece de resistance BJ and the Bear. Not for nothing, Larson had also been an early executive producer and one of the developers of the $6 Million Man. The guy's bona fides are apparent. What was also apparent is that Larson had grown up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and that he incorporated several aspects of Mormon theology in the 1978 series. Larson had been working on this idea since 1968, when his proposed series was named Adam's Ark. Here's an association that came from Battlestar Galactica's, both versions, future. The generation ship Nauvoo, which later became Medina Station, in James S. A. Corey's The Expanse space opera series, was also built by the Mormons. Was this an homage to the television series, or are LDS Church members destined to play a huge role in future space colonization? I suppose this question was a rhetorical one, but if you know the answer, by all means share with the group. This is the second time I've watched the first season of the reboot. I opened a new Target store in Central Arkansas back in 2004, and I wasn't watching much live television in those days. I was, however, a member in good standing of Netflix, which in those days meant getting those little red DVD envelopes through the mail. Since all 4 seasons of the reboot had been released on DVD by 2009, my best guess is that I began watching the series around this time. Between 2005 and 2010, when Netflix shifted its focus to streaming. 15 to 20 years ago. I'm not sure that I even knew who Ronald D. Moore was when I started watching the series. Oh, you don't know who Ronald D. Moore is? Moore was a college dropout and wannabe writer who managed to sell a script to Star Trek, The Next Generation in 1988. This led to another script and to a staff position as script editor, then co-producer. By the final season of TNG, he was a producer. Along with Brannon Braga, he co-wrote the screenplays for both Star Trek Generations and, one of my personal favorites, Star Trek, First Contact. The duo also wrote the TNG finale All Good Things, which won a Hugo Award. I'd like to report that I was quite familiar with Moore's work by this time, but the truth is that I may have gained this knowledge later. I rarely learn things all at once, so this cumulative knowledge about Ronald D. Moore may have arrived in my brain in some sort of cultural osmosis, through documentaries, commentary tracks, podcasts, and internet spelunking. I know that one of Moore's claims to fame, at least as far as Star Trek is concerned, is that a lot of the episodes he worked on expanded on Klingon culture. He continued this trend when he joined the production staff of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. By the time DS9 concluded its run, he was an executive producer. He had a busy, productive, and successful first decade in the business. Post-Trek, he was involved with a couple of series I've never watched or, at least in the case of Good vs. Evil, heard about. Then came the Battlestar Galactica miniseries, co-created with David Eek, which led to the 4-season series itself. Doubling back on my personal timeline a bit, I know I knew Moore's name before I saw the Portlandia episode One More Episode. It aired in 2012, which means I probably watched it a year or so later. While I recognized his name by this point, I didn't know enough about the man to recognize him in the episode itself, in which he appeared in another role. Moore's star has continued its ascent even after BSG. He adapted the series Outlander, which I have watched through season 6, it ends with the 8th season, I've heard. And he created the space drama For All Mankind for Apple TV+. This series has run for 4 seasons, and I haven't watched any of it yet. It's on my TBW list. That catches us all up on Ronald D. Moore. He's 60 years old now and has a few good years left in him, I'd bet. I watched the original series. As I remember, John Dykstra worked on the special effects for the series. He had been heavily involved in 1977 Star Wars, so, naturally, I was interested in the series. Honestly, I was interested in anything remotely science fiction before and after Star Wars, so I probably would have watched the 1978 series even without the Dykstra connection. I remember certain things about the series. The chrome-headed Cylons with their electronic by-your-command voices. The look of the spaceships, and how the Raptors were shot out of the Battlestar's nacelles, or whatever they're called in series. I remember Pa Cartwright as Adama, and I remember Starbuck being male instead of female. And some slick-headed older dude colluding with the enemy, looking too much like Richard Nixon to be anything other than a villain. I don't remember much else. I don't think I watched very much of the series. The fact that I can't recall individual plots and storylines suggests that I didn't love the show. So, I can't compare the reboot to the original, really. That's probably for the best. I can do a compare/contrast with other science fiction programs, though. Like Star Wars, the Battlestar Galactica universe feels lived in. The technology and engineering we see feels used and real. Unlike Star Trek with its bright colors and positive messages, BSG is dark and gritty, and far more militaristic. Like the Star Wars prequels, there's a major focus on galactic politics. I think it's far more interesting in the series, however. Time has helped me become more appreciative of the Star Wars turn into Trade Federation blockades and galactic Senate intrigue, but the politics of BSG felt more organic and realistic to me. Much of the series reminds me of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. It's more of a feel-a vibe. Also, robots and the search for Earth. I believe the idea that Cylons had evolved to the point that they could be indistinguishable from humans was something new in the series. That bit of red commie scare/invasion of the body snatchers paranoia was a welcome addition to the series in my eyes. It added both texture and depth to the series. I've always been more interested in people than in machines. The characters of this show are what drew me into it. I'm going to briefly list the main cast members and how they help drive the overarching plot, the space search for the promised land. Commander William Adama is played by Edward James Olmos. If you're an old guy like me, you knew him as the badass ninja cop Lieutenant Castillo in the television series Miami Vice. Just prior to the Cylon attack that sets the series in motion, the Galactica is about to be decommissioned and converted into a museum ship. You get the feeling that this is the terminus of Adama's military career as well. In short order, both Adama and the Battlestar are returned to active duty. Adama is the military leader of the fleet they are trying to escort to safety. Laura Roslin, Mary McDonnell, is the former Secretary of Education of the 12 Colonies, who suddenly finds herself appointed president after the Cylon attack. Gradually, she becomes something more as the religion of the colonists begins to insinuate its way into the story. Kara Starbuck Thrace, Kati Sackhoff, is the reimagined female version of the Dirk Benedict character from the original series. Female is not meant as a diminutive in this instance. Starbuck, An arrogant hotshot fighter pilot with a quick temper and aggressive vibe, is the most badass character on the show. Male or female? She had been engaged to Adama's son Zach, who died in horrible accident prior to the beginning of the story. The dead Zach is still a connection between Kara and Bill Adama, who treats her very much like a daughter. Still, she is a wild card and can't seem to stay out of trouble. Lee Apollo Adama, Jamie Bamber, is Adama's living son. Zach is also what Apollo and Starbuck have in common, but it becomes more than that as the story moves along. The two quickly become our will they or won't they couple. As a character, I wasn't impressed with Apollo through much of the first season. He's too stiff, too straight-laced, too vanilla. He grew on me as his character becomes more complex, with more shades of gray. Gaius Baltar, James Callis, is one of the boohis villains of the story, in theory. He is cowardly, selfish, greedy. A whole host of bad things, in fact. He was easily manipulated by the Cylon number 6, Trisha Helfer, into helping the Cylons effectively destroy the 12 colonies. Sending a fleet of human survivors that would eventually include Baltar caravanning across the universe in search of a legendary birthplace. Baltar continues to hallucinate the presence of the rather fetching number 6 even after he's aboard the Galactica. He continues in positions of some importance. But is he working for the colonists, or is he working for the Cylons? Or both? The strange thing is that I sometimes find myself rooting for the success of some of Baltar's little schemes. I know he's a villain. He's just so good at it. We get to know other characters in more depth as we get deeper into the season. There's Adama's Exo Saltai, Felix Gaeta, Anastasia Dula, Sharon Boomer Valerii, Galen Tyrol, Roslin's assistant Billy, Crashdown, Hot Dog, Callie, Sosinus, Hello, the chain-smoking Dr. Coddle. These names only mean something to you if you've already watched the series. I can't go any deeper into any of their stories without spoiling things for you if you haven't. There are even more characters on the Cylon side of the field. I like ensemble casts. In most ways, that's what this is. We get to know a lot about the main characters, but even the secondary characters get fleshed out in more than 2 dimensions. I can't say that this is true in all televised science fiction. This season, along with the miniseries, does an admirable job of introducing the world of Battlestar Galactica and the characters who will be guiding the fleet through the rest of the series. It introduces a few J.J. Abrams-type mystery boxes, hints at complicated and secret Cylon plans, engages in a little bit of soap opera-like character work, and closes out with a bit of expensive spectacle and a hint of the more mythic underpinnings of the story. It was as good as I thought it was the first time I watched it. Firewaters and They Have a Plan report card grade, A. In many ways, this is as good as science fiction gets. Share this. X. Facebook. Loading. Related. 10 list, first seasons, since September 2024. April 17, 2025. In 10 lists. Another Life, Netflix, a series, 13 Thoughts on Battlestar Galactica, 2004 Season 1, a review. I'm currently working my way through the original series, but I will revisit this one day. It is a great show. Liked by 2 people. Reply. The Battlestar Galactica reboot is my favorite series of the 21st century. I've avoided doing a season, or full series, retrospective on
Um, um, no, 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 please,